Welcome to Motherland Mushrooms. So today I'm going to show you how I prepare my popcorn. So I soaked my popcorn overnight, and you do this to allow the contaminants to germinate, which makes them more vulnerable to the pressure cooking heat. Usually I use this popcorn, which is the one that you cook, which is the one that you eat with. But it's more expensive than this one. This one I bought at the pet store, which I usually give to birds. And you can see that there's a difference in the size of the popcorn. Fail. Okay, so here you can see the difference in the size of the popcorn. This one from the pet store is much bigger than this one. So, okay, so all you're gonna need for this stick is you're gonna need your popcorn and gypsum and a pressure cooker. Uh, what I usually do is I don't use weight. I prefer to use measurements. So I've noticed that the popcorn usually becomes 3 times its size. So if you want to make 3 jars of popcorn, then I'll just use 1 jar and throw it in there. So I'm gonna be making 6 half jars because I'm gonna do a grain to grain transfer. So I just use 1 full jar, and then that 1 full jar will make 6 halves. So there's space for my inoculated grain. Okay. So what you're gonna do now? Okay. So what you're gonna do now? So I've soaked my popcorn. You don't have to soak your popcorn. I never did it before, but because I bought this popcorn at the pet store, I rather let it soak so that the contaminants can germinate. So I've let it soak now, and now I'm gonna add about half a tablespoon of gypsum. I don't like to add too much gypsum because I've noticed that after a week or so, the gypsum makes the popcorn dry inside the jar, and it usually makes the mycelium store. So I don't add too much gypsum. Okay, so now once you're done adding the gypsum, I just like to give it a little stir, and then we'll pressure cook it for 15 to 25 minutes. But I'll just pressure cook. You only start your timer once you start hearing this pressure cooker whistle. So now you only start the timer once you hear the pressure cooker whistle, which takes a few minutes depending on how much water is in there. So while we're waiting for the popcorn to pressure cook, we can start to cover our breathing holes on the lids with micropore tape. Now you can use polyfill, but I prefer micropore tape because it's easier to work with. So I usually put tape on the outside and one on the inside. I know that I need to replace some of my lids because of the rust. So the reason why I put on the inside is to cover the rust so that the grain doesn't touch well, I know it's going to touch some rust, but the parts that terrible. What you can also do is you can put like bunny ears so that it makes it easier to pull off again. So the popcorn is done pressure cooking. I've waited for the pressure to escape from the pot before I opened it, and now I'm going to separate the water from the popcorn. So I like to run some water with the cold water so that the pipes don't get too hot. So after you separate the water from the popcorn, you then lay it out onto a tray so that the excess water can steam off. And this allows the popcorn to have the right amount of moisture content. So I'll wait until all the steam is done steaming off, and then I'll pack them into the jars. And as you can see, the popcorn is okay. So after the steam has gone off, you can now test to see if the moisture content is right. So what I usually do is I take a piece of toilet paper and I will just leave it for about 5 seconds. And then you can look on the toilet paper to see it's not heavily wet, so I'll keep it like this. This is fine. And I'll pack the jars. So I said that I was gonna do 6 jars with just a little bit in them because I'm gonna do a grain to grain transfer. So I'm gonna split this between 6 jars. I don't know if this is gonna be enough. So all my jars are now packed. It wasn't enough popcorn, so the lesson here is rather have too much than too little. I hope that the grain that I'm inoculated with is gonna be enough. So what we do next now is we're gonna close the jars up. And then we're gonna put foil on. The reason why I put foil on is so that when the jars are in the pressure cooker, the water doesn't fall in or drip in, because otherwise that will change the moisture content of the popcorn and it might become too wet for my mycelium to grow. And then as an extra precaution, I put on elastic bands, and this just makes sure that it stays on, but this is optional, you don't need to do it. So now I put the lids inside my pressure cooker to make sure that the jars don't have direct contact with the pot. But I've done it in the past without lids and nothing happened. but I do it just for safety. And then you pressure cook the jars for between 1 hour and 1.5 hours. It all depends on the size of your jars, but I'll just pressure cook these for an hour. And then you need to make sure that you put enough water. You need to make sure that you put enough water in the pressure cooker so that it will last for that hour or 1.5 hours, depending on how big your pot is and how long you're gonna cook it. I usually fill it till about halfway the pot. This might be too much. I usually put in another smaller jar to stop the other three from moving around.